13 years ago, a college student shared a horrifying experience he had after playing a used N64 game. Jedusible, this is the name the internet knows him by, was a sophomore in college when a friend gifted him a Nintendo 64, which, is pretty cool of them. So he excitedly went to a yard sale where he wanted to find games that he used to play as a kid. He got lucky, he found some accessories and a few games, and he was on his way back to his car when someone caught his eye. It was an older man who was sitting next to a table that only had a few small boxes. I think most of us would assume that the chances of this older man having video games would be slim to none, and Jedusible felt the same way, but he still felt a strong urge to look anyways. Something about the old man put Jedusible on edge, but he pushed the feeling aside. Like, why would he feel this way? It's just an old man selling his stuff. The old man flashed a crooked smile at Jedusible. Well, he sorted through all his things, and in one of the boxes, there was a single N64 game. It looked pretty rough, and it didn't even have a title sticker. It just had the word Majora written in black Sharpie. It was a copy of The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. When he asked how much it was, the old man said,
"Take it. It belonged to somebody who doesn't live in the neighborhood anymore."
So, Jedusible thanked the old man and walked back to his car, and he thought he heard the old man say, "Goodbye, Ben," but he must have just said goodbye then, right? Back at his dorm, Jedusible wasted no time loading Majora. He was really excited, which, by the way, it still had an old save file named Ben. Curious, Jedusible loaded up the file, and he saw that Ben was pretty close to the end of the game, but must have died just right before he had a chance to finish it. Jedusible decided to start a new game and named his avatar Link. So at first, it seemed to play well despite a few glitches, like the NPCs sometimes calling his character Ben. But to fix this issue, he deleted Ben's old save, and after that, the NPCs just stopped using his avatar's name altogether. The longer Jedusible played the game, the glitchier it got. It randomly teleported him to various areas in the game, NPCs acted out of character or went missing, phrases popped up on the screen at all the wrong times. It was really weird. In the background, he could hear the Song of Healing playing, but in reverse, and it seemed to get louder and louder. Sometimes he thought he could hear the faint laughter from the happy masked salesman, but he couldn't see him anywhere. As time dragged on, Jedusible started experiencing feelings of depression, and he also became super paranoid, like he couldn't stop feeling as if someone was watching him. He could have set the game down and turned off his N64, but honestly it didn't cross his mind. Jedusible jumped when the soulless Link statue suddenly appeared before him, baring its teeth and staring at him with dark, empty eyes. The Elegy of Emptiness. The statue is supposed to appear if you play its song, but here it was, staring at him, and to make it worse, it began to follow him everywhere he went. More unnerving, the happy masked salesman appeared sometimes, staring right at Jedusible through the TV monitor. After many desperate attempts to play through the glitches, Jedusible found himself atop the clock tower. Skull Kid hovered above him, and the moon lingered close by. He tried taking out Skull Kid by damaging him with an arrow, which, seemed to work, but then text appeared that read, "That won't do you any good." Jedusible watched as his character began to hover above the ground and burst into flames, screaming in agony before dying. Nothing in this game was making any sense. After his character's death, the screen went black. The N64 sputtered, and a moment later, a scene appeared with Link lying lifeless on the ground. Skull Kid floated above his body. Jedusible mashed all the buttons on his controller, but it didn't respond. So Jedusible had nothing else to do but stare in frozen horror. The screen had turned black again, and more words appeared on the screen. "You've met with a terrible fate, haven't you?" At the title screen, Jedusible found a new save file named Your Turn. When he loaded the file, the game returned him to the scene where his character lay dead with Skull Kid laughing above him, just completely echoing through his speakers. So, freaked out, like any of us would be, Jedusible reset the game and watched as another file appeared, and it was called Ben. He loaded the file, and sure enough, it was the same file he had deleted earlier. He couldn't take any more of this, it was driving him crazy, so he turned off the game. He tried to sleep, but the reverse version of the Song of Healing kept ringing in his ears, and he couldn't shake this feeling of dread. When he did drift off, nightmarish visions of the Link statue invaded his dreams, and oddly in his dream, he called this statue Ben. So, completely freaked out, he decided to take the game back to the old man. But when Jedusible went back to the house, it was empty. A neighbor told Jedusible that the old man had moved away. So he asked the neighbor if he had known anybody named Ben who used to live in the neighborhood, and it turned out that Ben was a teenager who had died 8 years ago. Jedusible went back to his dorm, started up Majora, and loaded the Ben file again. Only now the save data showed more game progress. The gameplay became more complicated and confusing. 3 NPCs taunted him: the Happy Mask Salesman, Skull Kid, and the Link statue. After a few hours, he was led to the Great Bay. Putting on the Zora mask, he dived deep into the ocean where he found another Link statue. As he swam closer to it, his aquatic character drowned. At that moment, Jedusible realized the game was showing him Ben's fate, the way he had died. He died from drowning. Jedusible didn't want to believe it because, how? Like, none of this makes sense. But he couldn't shake the feeling that it was Ben's spirit inside the game, embodying the Link statue, and now it was following him wherever he went, and not just in the game. Ben was in his dreams, and Jedusible could feel his eyes on him wherever he went. Jedusible became so frightened, he locked himself up in his dorm. He didn't want to play the game, but he felt like if he didn't, something bad would happen. So to make sure he wasn't crazy, he created videos of his gameplay, kept a diary on his laptop. He used his laptop to upload all of his gameplay files to YouTube. And after spending a couple more days trying to make sense of everything, Jedusible decided to take a break because, the game was taking over his life. A day later, while working on his laptop, a text document opened on its own. It said, "Hi," and had the link www.cleverbot.com. Jedusible clicked the link, by the way, just don't click random links, but he clicked the link, which led him to a bot chatting website. In the chat box, he typed "hello" and received an immediate response. At first, he assumed he was talking to an AI, but the responses didn't feel robotic. It felt too real. He figured he must be talking to some IT show-off who hacked his laptop, until the entity said he wanted him to go back and play the game. Jedusible asked if it was Ben, which it didn't reply, but it also didn't deny. In absolute horror, Jedusible realized he had given the entity access to his laptop. It was monitoring everything: what he types, the websites he visits, and even watching him through his webcam. Ben promised he would leave Jedusible alone under one condition: set him free. Jedusible refused. He tried to ignore Ben, but it felt like Ben was just everywhere. Jedusible had barely slept since he started playing Majora. Eventually, he passed out from exhaustion, and that night he had the most horrifying dream of all. Jedusible was standing in a dark field with the Moon Children and the Happy Mask Salesman. The Moon Children pinned him to the ground, while the salesman pulled a mask from his bag and forced it onto Jedusible's face. It wasn't a mask that matched anything from the game. It was a face that looked like Ben's face? 2 of the Moon Children sewed the mask to Jedusible's face, and he screamed as the needles punctured and pulled thick thread tightly through his flesh. Once the mask was secure, they sewed his legs together and his arms to his sides. They were forming him into the emptiness statue. The salesman looked down at him with a wide grin and said,
"You've met with a terrible fate, haven't you?"
Jedusible jumped up, finally awake and just completely drenched in sweat. He contacted Ben through Cleverbot, who told Jedusible to keep playing the game and that there was a secret that he must unlock. As their conversation went on, Jedusible realized this thing wasn't Ben's spirit. More than likely, it was the thing responsible for Ben's death, and if he didn't give it what it wanted, he would be the next victim. Jedusible gave in and went back to playing the game, but nothing changed. His character died over and over and over. Upon uploading another video to YouTube, Jujuzable noticed that the videos on his channel were different from his gameplay. Ben was changing them. Before Jujuzable could remove the videos, Ben locked him out of his account. Jujuzable realized what Ben meant by setting it free. It wanted him to upload all these videos. He wanted other people to see them and get them trapped in its game just like him. Jujuzable knew there was nothing he could do about the videos now, but he still wanted to send out a warning, praying that the entity wasn't watching. Jujuzable emailed himself all of his notes, and it seemed to work. On September 15th, from the computer in the campus library, he finished writing up his final notes to post to the paranormal board on the 4chan image board website. In his final message, he warned readers not to download any of his files. Jujuzable's account went silent after that, but all the files still linger on the internet.